Good evening, I'm Lauren McCoy.
And I'm Liz Reyes. Breaking tonight, the city of New Orleans confirms the names of 3 finalists in the search for the next chief of police.
And the group leading this search publicly released their scores for each of the 3 candidates. And that includes current NOPD interim superintendent Michelle Woodfork, who is still in the running. David Jones is live in the studio breaking down what we've learned tonight. David.
Viewers will recognize the name of Michelle Woodfork, who stepped into the role of NOPD interim chief following the retirement of her predecessor, Sean Ferguson. Along with Woodfork, the mayor selected 2 other candidates to interview with her: Cedric Andres, former police chief in Henderson, Nevada, and Ann Kirkpatrick, former police chief in Oakland, California. And here's how their 3 scores in their assessments from an outside group were broken down. In the first category, analysis presentation, Andres scored a 90%, Kirkpatrick scored an 89%, and Woodfork scored an 83%. In the second category, structured interview, Andre scored an 84%, Kirkpatrick scored a 58%, and Woodfork scored a 74%. And finally, in the third category, written exercise, all candidates scored below a 70%. Andre scored a 57%. Kirkpatrick scored a 64% and Woodfork scored a 54%. An external panel made up of business, civic, and other political leaders was one of 2 panels selected to interview semifinalists, along with an internal panel made up of city administration officials. And a source familiar with the search says the external panel was of the majority opinion that Woodfork shows potential but lacks adequate experience for the job and would benefit from mentoring. The group leading the search, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, will start reaching out to city council members to arrange briefings on what the search process entailed and how they arrived at their scores. And the next step in the process is to bring the candidates into City Hall for an in-person interview with New Orleans Mayor Latoya Cantrell.